win any game when we're locked in defensively. And then, obviously, Chelsea had some crazy heroics at the end there.
When the ultimate championship standard collides with unprecedented hype, somebody is bound to get exposed under the bright lights. And that is precisely what went down when the Las Vegas Aces took the court against the Indiana Fever. Everyone was tuning in to see generational rookie Caitlin Clark test her skills against the undisputed gold standard of the 1BA. But what unfolded in the closing minutes of that game sparked a media war that nobody saw coming. The game was tight, the tension was thick, and every single possession felt like a playoff battle. Yet when the final whistle blew, the scoreboard was only half the story. The real explosion happened when legendary head coach Becky Hammond walked up to the microphone, took a deep breath, and delivered a brutally honest assessment that cut straight through the media narrative. She did not hold back. She did not offer sugar-coated compliments, and she certainly did not care about hurting anyone's feelings. Instead, she broke down exactly why Caitlin Clark struggled so severely in the fourth quarter when trying to break through a defense anchored by multi-time MVP Aja Wilson. The statements were so blunt, so direct, and so unapologetic that within minutes, clips of the press conference were tearing through social media, splitting the basketball world right down the middle. To understand why Hammond's words caused such a massive shockwave across the entire sports landscape, you have to look at what actually happened on the hardwood during those critical final 6 minutes. The Fever had fought valiantly all night, staying within striking distance off the back of early perimeter shooting and fast break transition points. But as the clock ticked down into crunch time, the Aces dialed up an entirely different level of defensive intensity, trapping Clark past half court and forcing her into brutal physical baseline traps. Every time Clark tried to drive into the lane, she was met by the towering, impenetrable wall of Aja Wilson, who completely erased standard floaters and took away primary passing lanes. The sheer physical wear and tear began to show instantly as Clark turned the ball over on back-to-back possessions, misread basic help-side rotations, and looked visibly exhausted under the relentless full-court pressure. It was a classic veteran team pulling the plug on a young star, showing the massive gap between elite college dominance and hard-nosed professional execution. But while most coaches would offer standard post-game platitudes about a rookie learning the ropes, Becky Hammond decided to lay out the cold, hard reality for everyone to hear. When reporters pressed Hammond on how her squad managed to completely smother Clark down the stretch, she did not give a diplomatic, cookie-cutter answer. She pointed out that while the media acts like every pass and logo three is a miracle, top-tier professional basketball comes down to physical punishment, defensive scheme, and targeting weaknesses without mercy. Hammond explained that high-usage guards who lack elite top-end lateral quickness are always going to get hunted on the other end of the floor, and when you put them in action after action, their legs give out by the fourth quarter. She made it crystal clear that nobody in her locker room was scared of the hype, and that bringing a rookie back down to earth is simply standard business for a championship franchise. What made her comments hit like a freight train was the underlying message that talent alone cannot override years of physical development, championship experience, and raw defensive dominance like that of Aja Wilson. Hammond essentially told the entire world that if you do not respect the physicality of veterans, you are going to get systematically broken down when the game is on the line, and that lesson was delivered live on national television. The reaction from fans and commentators was immediate and volatile, with sports debate shows running emergency segments analyzing every single word Hammond uttered. Clark's massive, loyal fan base took Hammond's direct comments as a personal attack, accusing the two-time NBA champion coach of being bitter, jealous, and actively trying to tear down a rising star who brought millions of new eyes to the league. Social media exploded with angry comments, calling the quotes unfair, petty, and indicative of a league-wide conspiracy among veterans who supposedly resented the rookie's immense spotlight. On the flip side, longtime WNBA purists and former players stepped up to defend Hammond, arguing that she was simply offering elite, high-level tactical analysis that any real basketball mind would appreciate. They pointed out that basketball is a brutal, unforgiving sport where opponents hunt for any tiny weakness, and pointing out late-game fatigue and turnover issues is not hate, it is just basic scouting. But regardless of which side people took, the cat was out of the bag, and the narrative around Clark's late-game efficiency became the central talking point of her entire rookie season. Beneath the surface of this coaching media storm lay an even deeper dynamic that had been brewing all year between A'ja Wilson and the incoming rookie class. Wilson was coming off historic, record-breaking seasons, dominating the floor as both an unstoppable offensive force and an elite defensive rim protector. Yet much of the mainstream media conversation was constantly sucked toward the incoming college stars. During that late-game stretch, Wilson played with an extra edge, blocking shots with authority, snatching rebounds over multiple defenders, and letting the opposing bench know exactly who ran the paint. Every time Clark attempted to challenge Wilson near the rim, she was met with pure physical dominance that left no doubt as to who held the crown in the WNBA. When Hammond highlighted Wilson's impact in the post-game presser, she was not just breaking down tactics, she was reminding the world that the reigning champions and their superstar big woman were not going to step aside for anyone's marketing narrative. The message was loud and clear. If you want to win in this league, you have to go through the absolute best, and the absolute best do not give out free passes. This specific game, and Hammond's brutal analysis, essentially created a blueprint for the rest of the league on how to defend Indiana's high-octane offense. For weeks following that game, opposing coaches aggressively copied the Aces' late-game defensive packages, blitzing Clark off pick-and-rolls, bumping her at half-court, and forcing her off-ball to drain her energy reserves. The physical toll on Clark was obvious, leading to a stretch of games where her fourth-quarter efficiency dropped noticeably, accompanied by a spike in unforced turnovers and technical fouls. Critics jumped on these struggles as proof that Hammond's harsh words were completely accurate, claiming the rookie had officially hit a wall that she might not be able to climb over anytime soon. But what the skeptics failed to anticipate was how a true competitive spirit responds when pushed into a corner by the best in the business. Instead of shrinking under the intense scrutiny and heavy physical play, Clark used that exact blueprint as a roadmap for her own growth, forced to adapt faster than almost any rookie in league history. As the season progressed, the Fever's coaching staff began shifting Clark's off-ball positioning, setting harder rescreens, and adjusting their late-game execution to counter the aggressive traps pioneered by teams like Las Vegas. Clark started picking up on defensive rotations quicker, releasing the ball earlier to open teammates, and building up the physical conditioning required to endure 40 minutes of non-stop full-court pressure. When the Fever faced top-tier defensive teams later in the year, the late-game breakdown that Hammond so brutally pointed out started happening far less frequently. Clark proved that she possessed the mental resilience to swallow tough criticism, learn from severe physical setbacks, and refine her game under the harshest spotlight imaginable. The brutal reality check offered by Becky Hammond turned out to be the exact spark that accelerated Clark's evolution from a gifted college phenom into a legit, battle-tested professional superstar who could adjust on the fly. Yet the feud, the quotes, and the intense rivalry between these teams left a permanent mark on the WNBA landscape, fundamentally changing how fans view every matchup between Indiana and Las Vegas. Every single time these two franchises share the floor now, the arena is packed, the air is electric, and every play is scrutinized under a microscopic lens. The dynamic between Hammond's championship grit and Clark's revolutionary play style created a natural, highly compelling narrative that keeps millions of viewers glued to their screens, from kickoff to the final buzzer. It proved that real sports entertainment does not come from soft compliments and polite participation. It comes from high-stakes conflict, unfiltered honesty, and elite athletes refusing to back down from a challenge. Looking back at that viral post-game moment, it is clear that Becky Hammond's comments were never just about one single late-game struggle or one individual rookie performance. They were a raw, unfiltered expression of the incredible competitive standard that exists at the highest level of professional basketball, a level where nothing is given and everything must be earned through physical and mental battle. A'ja Wilson's sheer dominance in the paint, combined with Hammond's masterclass in defensive strategy, provided the ultimate trial by fire for a rookie trying to redefine the sport. In the end, the brutal truth might have hurt at the moment, but it served as the catalyst for one of the most exciting, intense, and high-retention basketball rivalries the league has ever seen, leaving fans eagerly anticipating every single chapter that has yet to be written. The deep dive into this rivalry exposes something far greater than simple post-game drama. It reveals the systemic shift currently shaking the core of women's basketball. For decades, the 1BA operated in a relative vacuum, where tactical nuance and veteran grit were appreciated only by hardcore basketball aficionados. Now, with millions of new spectators dissecting every single play, every quote from a coach like Becky Hammond is amplified into a national headline that can define an entire season's narrative. When Hammond stood at that podium and broke down Clark's fourth-quarter stagnation, she wasn't speaking to casual fans looking for feel-good stories. She was speaking as a former legendary point guard and a master strategist who spent years on NBA and WNBA sidelines learning how to break down the world's most talented creators. For Hammond, pointing out Clark's inability to beat double teams or navigate Wilson's drop coverage was not an act of hostility, but rather the highest form of respect you can give a competitor, treating them like a target that must be systematically solved. When you analyze the specific geometry of the floor during those late-game sequences against Las Vegas, you start to see the tactical chess match that unfolded. In the first half, Clark was able to operate with dynamic freedom, utilizing high-horn screens and quick handoffs to pull up from well beyond the three-point line before defensive rotations could form. The Aces were initially playing standard drop coverage, giving Clark just enough space to feel comfortable and dictate the tempo. However, coming out of the halftime locker room, Hammond adjusted the entire defensive scheme by ordering her guards to step up over every top screen, forcing Clark into the secondary layer of defense. That secondary layer wasn't just any baseline defender. It was A'ja Wilson, a defensive force capable of covering ground with terrifying speed and erasing scoring angles before a guard can even gather the ball. This sudden shift in physical demands caught the young Indiana guard off guard, leading to forced passes into tight windows that turned into immediate transition points for the Aces. As the fourth quarter wore on, every single dribble required maximum physical output from Clark, who was being bumped, hand-checked, and shadowed by multiple defenders on every possession. In professional basketball, fatigue doesn't just slow down your legs. It compromises your decision-making process, causing split-second delays in passing vision that turn open teammates into contested turnovers. When Clark began throwing forced cross-court passes that were easily intercepted by Las Vegas wings, it was the direct result of physical exhaustion meeting elite defensive preparation. Hammond saw this breakdown happening in real time and seized upon it, instructing her players to double down on the pressure and refuse to let the rookie catch her breath for even a single possession. The aftermath of Hammond's press conference was a watershed moment for sports media coverage, illustrating the massive disconnect between old-school sports culture and modern digital fan bases. Online communities dedicated to Clark viewed Hammond's blunt delivery as disrespectful, interpreting her technical breakdown as an attempt to diminish the rookie's undeniable impact on league attendance and television ratings. Many casual viewers questioned why a championship coach would go out of her way to publicly pick apart a 22-year-old player who was carrying such a massive promotional weight for the entire sport. They argued that veterans and coaches should be nurturing incoming talent, rather than shining a bright light on their tactical weaknesses during post-game media availability. This response created an instant divide, with die-hard basketball purists defending Hammond's right to discuss real tactical realities without having to censor herself for sensitive audiences. On national debate shows, analysts argued endlessly over whether Hammond crossed a line or if she simply exposed a standard learning curve that every great player must go through. Former players pointed out that legends like Diana Taurasi, Sue Bird, and Maya Moore all faced brutal physical initiation periods when they first entered the league, often struggling against older, stronger defenders who made it their personal mission to test their resolve. They stressed that no player, regardless of how transcendent their college career was, is exempt from paying their dues against championship-caliber defenses. The drama escalated as clip after clip was dissected, with commentators pointing out subtle facial expressions from Hammond and Wilson during the presser, feeding an endlessly hungry news cycle that craved conflict over harmony. For Aja Wilson, the conversation surrounding the game was a stark reminder of the constant battle for individual recognition in a league undergoing rapid transformation. Despite putting up historic statistical lines night after night and anchoring the best defense in the league, Wilson frequently found herself secondary in media headlines to the rookie phenomenon. The late-game showdown against Clark gave Wilson an opportunity to assert her dominant status on the floor, delivering a defensive performance that served as a masterclass in interior positioning and rim protection. Every block, every altered shot, and every defensive rebound was a statement that the current generation of superstars will not yield their territory easily. Wilson's presence forced Clark to alter her standard finishing mechanics, leading to missed layups and frustrated appeals to the referees that only further disrupted Indiana's offensive rhythm. As the weeks went on, the narrative established by Hammond's comments began to influence how other opposing defenses targeted Clark across the entire league. Opposing scouts realized that if you allow Clark to find a comfortable rhythm early, her deep range and elite court vision can completely blow a game open. However, if you hit her early, force her to work through physical off-ball screens, and bring immediate blitzes on late-game pick-and-rolls, you can force her into high-volume turnover nights. Teams like the Connecticut Sun and the Minnesota Lynx implemented similar defensive packages, turning every matchup into a grinding, physical test that pushed Clark to her absolute limit. The sheer intensity of these game plans demonstrated that Hammond's initial critique was not an isolated opinion, but rather the consensus strategy among the league's top defensive minds. Faced with this relentless physical onslaught, Clark and the Indiana coaching staff were forced to spend countless hours in the film room addressing the specific vulnerabilities exposed by Las Vegas. They began implementing countermeasures designed to relieve the mounting physical pressure on their primary playmaker. Instead of having Clark initiate every single possession from the top of the key, they began using her as a screener in secondary actions, forcing defenses to switch or give up open looks to complementary scorers. They also worked extensively on Clark's late-game conditioning, adjusting her physical training regimen to ensure she maintained explosive lateral movement even into the final minutes of high-intensity contests. These subtle adjustments began to bear fruit as the season progressed, showing that the harsh lesson delivered by Hammond had ultimately served as a vital stepping stone in Clark's professional development. The narrative arc of this rivalry highlights the ultimate